Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with Clara Rose. I, of course, am Clara Rose. Every week I show up here to give you some stuff, some knowledge, drop some stuff on you. And I'm super excited today that we have an interview with an amazing person. I can't wait to tell you about him. Before we get started, I just want to say if you have been here before, welcome back, my friend. But if this is your first time, feel free to hop on over to your email and send me a hello at clararose.com. Send me a quick message saying, hey, I caught your show today. And if you have any questions, anything that you'd like us to cover on future shows, that's the place that you can drop that information. Okay, so this week we have an interview with, of course, an author. You know that I love authors as a publisher myself. Love to bring authors onto the program that have written something amazing, and this guy has written something amazing. So really quickly, let me just tell you about him. He is called the Affiliate Guy. So he is the host of the Affiliate Guy podcast, which is your source for affiliate marketing news, tips, strategies to take your online business to the next level. So Matt McWilliams, is living proof that one can pursue one's passion in life and do so while making a profit as well. He has worked with some of the top companies and entrepreneurs on the planet, such as Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, Tony Robinson. I always get his name wrong. Dean Graziosi. I always say that wrong. I apologize, Dean. Let's see, Michael Hyatt. You've heard me talk about Michael Hyatt multiple times. Jeff Walker, Brian Tracy, some really big names. He is here to help you turn your quest for your passion and message into a profitable and growing business. Now, what I love about this is that he has taken this knowledge and he has put it into a book. And we're here to talk about his book today. So please help me welcome Matt McWilliams. Are you with us today, Matt?
I am, Clara. Thanks so much for having me.
Hello. I am super excited about your new book, Turning Your Passion into Profits, The Proven Path for Building a Rewarding Online Business. So I, of course, am not an affiliate marketer, but part of my business is online. So my heart is definitely connected there. And of course, because you have a book and I'm a publisher, I was super excited to be a part of helping with this book launch. Tell me first what it is that you do so that my audience knows.
Yeah. So, I mean, my heart is for entrepreneurs. You know, my heart has been, I've been an entrepreneur for almost 20 years now. And I refer to myself as utterly unemployable because, you know, I've just always been one of those people that, you know, you can call it, I think when I was young, it was a stubbornness, you know, like, I know I want it to be this way. And well, like the only way I can get it to be done my way is to, well, run the company. But as I've grown older, it's just more about like, okay, the ways that I'm able to impact others is through being an entrepreneur. And so because of that, I mean, that's really the genesis of this book was I've helped, you know, hundreds of thousands now, over 300,000 people with their online business. For most people that we work with, it's the word I use is accessibility. You know, our coaching program is unaccessible or inaccessible for 99% of the population just because of the price and what we spend, you know, the intimacy that we develop with our clients. And so how can we get this message out in the world? How can we make this affordable and accessible for as many people as possible? Ultimately, that was to put, you know, the system and put the path in a book so that, you know, pretty much anybody is able to read it. You know, thankfully, you know, books are priced in a way that for most of the population, at least in America, they're accessible. And so that's ultimately where this came from.
I love that. I love that you've taken, and of course, because of what I do, I help entrepreneurs, people just like you who have a brand or a message or a ministry or a cause or whatever. I help them create the book. And while I didn't work on this book, I love that you took your knowledge and you put it in a book so that it was accessible. It was, you know, anybody can get their hands on your book and make a difference in what they're trying to create. And then, of course, they get to meet you, right? Through your book, they get to know you a little bit. And then some of those people will say, you know what? I really do need to hire Matt to be my coach. I really need to take it to the next level. And you offer that as well.
Yeah, I didn't realize until so I just am now, believe it or not, listening to the audiobook. I actually did not listen to it in advance just because I didn't have the time to. We were launching the book, and here it is. It launched, 6 days ago officially. And so I just didn't have time to even listen to the audiobook. I didn't even hear a clip of it until after it had gone live. And I knew going into it, though, we got my dream narrator. He's a guy who's narrated, half a dozen books that I've listened to, an amazing voice and just an amazing talent. So I knew it was going to be done great. Ascent Audio did it, and they're probably the best out there at audiobooks. And I mean, so I knew it was going to be amazing. So I just had confidence in that. But I'm listening to it. I didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, like in this book, how much of my own story I really do tell. There is so much of my story. I feel like it's kind of crazy. By the end of the book, it's like they not only know me, but they know some of our clients. They know some of our, my friends. It's really kind of interesting, like the level of intimacy that you get in something like this when you use story like I do. I use story to make a point. I use story to reinforce the ideas, because you might not remember the 7 keys to blank or the 9 ways to such and such or the 3 principles of this, but you'll remember the story. And if you remember the story, then you'll internalize that principle and you won't even know it. And the next thing you know, you'll be like, oh, that's right. Matt's dad, lead magnet, boom, boom, boom. I need to do this. And you'll be able to put it into practice. And that's what I care more about than anything. Like I don't want people to memorize the principles or the steps. I want them to go through the book. I want them to do the exercise. I want them to remember the stories. I want them to implement it. And I would much rather hear from somebody 6 months from now, Matt, I haven't finished the book. Well, why not? Because I'm still working on step 7. Awesome. That's what I want to hear. Like, versus I read the book in a week. Cool. What'd you do with it? Nothing. Well, what impact did that really have? So yeah, the story is super important. I think there's a lot of mine woven through it. And I didn't realize till I listened to it, like, wow, those are actually some pretty good stories. We have that fear as an author, like, is anybody going to even like this book? Is it going to actually impact people? And thankfully we believe it has.
So the beautiful thing about having woven so much of your story into the book is now we know you, right? It's our perception that we know you, right? But that comes with a comfort level, right? So what you've done is you've taken a book and made it so that we get to know you and become so comfortable with you that next step is a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
As long as there's a financial barrier to hiring you for a coach, that next step is a given. It's like, oh yeah, I totally need, and that's always my goal when I work with an author, is to capture their voice in the book so that people get to know them, and then that's an automatic. So that's awesome that you did that without even planning it. Obviously,
I wish I could say. I mean, I knew that story is important. I knew the studies, that show that we remember the stories better, and I've used these stories for years. I didn't realize, like I said, until I listened to it, that, oh my gosh, like the stories actually do tie in really well. And I totally see how I taught the lesson using that story. It was kind of one of those things, like it wasn't unintentional. I just didn't realize I actually did a pretty good job at it.
So kudos to you, right?
Yeah.
For coming
It's all
out
good.
with good stuff there. I do have some questions, and we only have 30 minutes today, so I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to pull some good stuff out of your brain. So I have some questions for you.
Yeah, fire away.
First of all, what would you say to somebody who says they aren't qualified to be a thought leader in their industry? Is one of the things that you say, does the world need another messenger teacher thought leader? Too many people believe that their voice is not necessary, but it is. So speak to that. What would you say to someone who's like, I'm not a thought leader. I can't be a thought leader.
Yeah, we just talked about story. And I mean, I would share one of the stories from the book. There's a lady that I talked to one day. She was applying for our mastermind. And so the final step in applying for the mastermind, like she got through all the hoops. Our team said she'd be great. You talk to me for 15 minutes. And I just want to make sure you're a good fit. You're going to get along with everybody, that you can take a joke, because we make fun of each other sometimes, things like that. And this lady has 2 autistic children. And I finished talking to her. I explained what the mastermind is, how much it costs, all that stuff. And she's like, Matt, I would love to be in. So there's only one problem. I'm like, what is it? She said, I don't think I'm qualified to do this. I don't think I have the credentials to do a platform in this regard. And I'm like, you just spent the last 10 minutes telling me that you have two autistic children and you have a heart for parents of autistic children, helping them to thrive. She said, yeah. I said, so what makes you think you're not qualified? She's like, well, I don't have letters after my name. I didn't go to a fancy school. I dropped out of community college. But I call them the but eyes, right? But I blank, but I, and we compare ourselves to others, right? And there's two quotes in the book that I love. One is from John Acuff, says, never compare your beginning to someone else's middle. The other is from Stephen Furtick, who says, the reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reels. And so I said to this lady, I was like, okay, let me ask you something. I don't know what made me think of this question. It's kind of a crass question. I was a little afraid she would respond like, you are the devil and I'm hanging up on you. But I said, have you ever thought about killing your children? Now, she didn't respond by being offended. She actually said, every day. I don't mean she's literally thinking up ways to drown her children, just to be clear. But as parents, just sometimes like parents, non-autistic children, we're just like, you know? And so she said every day. And I said, but you haven't. As a matter of fact, you told me earlier that your kids are doing amazing. They're doing great in school. They have straight A's. They have friends. They both play sports. They're well adjusted. And for an autistic child, they're doing pretty darn good. What makes you think you're not qualified? Now, the part that's not in the book, because I finished the manuscript about a year ago, and then fast forward about 6 months after I finished the manuscript, I said to this lady, I said, no, that's your thing. You go share your experience. Your qualifications are you've been there, done that. And so fast forward about 6 months later, she emailed me and said, you're not going to believe this, Matt, but I wanted to give you an update. I started my YouTube channel about 6 months ago, my website. I've been doing this. Here's the content I've been creating. She's got over 10,000 YouTube followers, about 5,000 people on her email list. And she had this one video that had almost 250,000 views about traveling with autistic children. Because I didn't know this, but you take a child who's autistic and that you get on an airplane, you wake them up early, you get them out of their routine, you put them on this metal tube surrounded by 200 other people who don't understand personal space. And then you fly at 35,000 feet and things start happening to your ears and they don't understand it. It's very different for them and it can be stressful. And so that stress that they're experiencing, sometimes they'll act out. Well, then the fear of them acting out manifests itself on the parent, who begins for days in advance to freak out about that possibility. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And she teaches parents of autistic children how to travel in this video and how she's done it for years. And there was a comment on that YouTube video that said, I just wanted to let you know, you completely changed my life. I have an autistic child. He's 7 years old. We haven't left the county in 4 years. I've been afraid to travel. Because of this video, we just booked a flight to Hawaii.
That is beautiful. Right?
You think that you don't think you're not qualified.
Right.
You think you're not qualified.
There's her book right there. She needs to write a book.
Yeah, that's it. That is your qualification. Your qualification is your experience, your unique background, your unique story. So real quick, as we tie up the answer to that question, and there's obviously so much more in the book, but like the idea of, think about it this way. There's somebody out there teaching the same thing, Matt. Yeah. But they've been married for 20 years. They're in their mid 40s and they have no kids. And they're teaching pretty much the same thing as you. But you're a single mom in your mid 30s with 3 kids. The way that you're going to teach pretty much the same thing is going to have a different spin on it, and it's going to attract a different audience, because all the single moms out there going, that lady, I can't relate to her. She's older. She doesn't have kids. She's got a husband to support her. I can't relate to that message.
Yep.
But this lady, oh my gosh, that's my peeps. And then we attract those people into our lives.
Yep. I actually say that all the time to my clients. You know what? Be your own kind of weird, right? Your people will find you, right?
Yep.
I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but the people who are attracted to me and attracted to what I do, those are my people, right? So be authentically who you are. Your people will find you, I promise.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I love to hear stories of people making a difference. You know, they're showing up, they're speaking up, they're making a difference in the world around them. And I love that. I love to hear those stories. Okay, I have another question for you. In the book, you cite what you call revolutionary leaders. So who are some of them and what can we learn from them as entrepreneurs who we're all building a platform?
Yeah, it's so funny. That was the part I was listening to this morning.
Oh, awesome.
As I was getting ready, I actually And I was like, oh my goodness, I mean, I've shared this stuff for years. I'm the one who wrote it, but I was like, ooh, in his voice, this sounds really, really good. you know, um, yeah. So the revolutionary leaders, I cite six of them in the book. I could have, I mean, in the initial manuscript, I think I had 12. And we
Sure.
decided as we cut 107, what would have literally been a 500-page book. I mean, you can look at it. It's still a thick one. It's almost 300 pages. But as we cut what would have been a 500-page book down into about a 290-page book, well, we had to delete. One of the things we had to do is delete half of those people. And it's like, okay, who are the six that really sum this up, right? Who are those six? And so the first one is Jesus. The second one
Hmm.
is Martin Luther King Jr. When we're recording this on MLK Day, actually,
Right.
which I think is appropriate, literally for me to listen to that on this day. I talk about Gandhi. I talk about Steve Jobs from a business standpoint, and then the last two I talk about are Muhammad and Nelson Mandela. And the point is like, okay, who are these single people who completely revolutionized the world? And again, the list would be, I mean, there are so many other people who've had a massive impact on the world, but I think it'd be hard to argue there were, another two or three who had more of an impact than those six people. And so I walked through, okay, like what are those aspects of these revolutionary leaders? How do we, one of the things that they did was they championed a cause. That's what that whole section of the book is about. They championed a cause. And I walk you through that. Like number one, you got to make sure you understand them, and you need to make it clear to your audience that you understand them. And I share some examples and some templates of how you can do that in the book, like actual text that you can write and fill in the blank and say, here's how I can communicate to my audience that I get them, right? The second thing is we got to ease their fears. I used to talk a lot about, when I would talk about this, I'd talk about the Great Depression and how when one of the things that we saw in the Great Depression was like men, because it was primarily at that time men in the workforce, there were millions of men who didn't even go look for jobs because they were paralyzed with fear. And I started writing the book during the pandemic, toward the beginning of the pandemic. And so I suddenly was able to change my reference point to say, you know what? Equate it to like the first 6 weeks of the pandemic. You didn't go look for a job then. You didn't know, like, we didn't know if we could pump gas and survive. Like, was it going to kill us to go pump gas? We didn't know. Was our dog going to give us COVID? Was it going to affect this age versus this age, or this, what if you've got this health problem but not this one? And we just didn't know. So when we have that fear, we're paralyzed. So how can you ease those fears? How can you spark their imagination, right? How can you, and there's so many of these more in the book, but like, how can you spark their imagination and get them thinking like, what if, right? What if it was possible to blank? What if you could find your dream job and love your work without taking a massive pay cut? So we have to spark that imagination and get them thinking about the possibilities. The imagination is the big word there. And the thing these revolutionary leaders do, they create a common enemy. If you think about it, like there's a reason why these, I call them archetypal enemies. They exist in every major religion. Even in Buddhism, where there's not like there's not Satan. In Buddhism, it's ego. It's is one of the big ones in Buddhism. In obviously in Christianity, it's the devil. He's the, like, we're against the devil. Martin Luther King was against racism and oppression. Mandela was against apartheid. Steve Jobs was against the status quo. If you've ever seen the 1984 Super Bowl commercial, where they talk about Big Brother and they smash the computer, that's against the status quo. The thing we got to do is you got to validate their doubts, because your audience has doubts. All right. Your audience has doubts about your product. They have doubts about whether or not there's even a solution. And if you just pretend that those doubts don't exist, you try to sweep them under the rug, we're not going to be able to connect with them. So you got to acknowledge them. You got to validate those doubts. You got to make them seem normal. And then you got to show them how you and other people have overcome those doubts. And then the last three things you got to do, you got to be able to defend them against their haters. So you got to be your biggest advocate for your audience. You got to inspire them to dream bigger. You've got to think them, or you got to get them to think how they can think bigger. You got to understand what their dreams are and then expand those dreams. And then lastly, you've got to show them the path. So we show them step one. We show them step two. All the motivation. I can, like right now, I can motivate you. I can inspire you. I can get you. I can do this, Matt. If I don't actually show you the path, like the entire book in this case is the path, then if you're not going to take the first step, let alone any of the other steps. So motivation is great, but we need to show them the path. And ultimately, those are the things that we found, with these leaders across all domains, political, religious, business, everything. These are the things that we've seen amongst all these leaders. And then we show them how you can apply those to an online business.
Wow, that's such good stuff. I actually have, because I am helping with the launch process, I actually have read a good portion of the book, but digitally, and I can't wait to get my hands like on the physical, copy that you can smell and touch, and because
you can. My daughter did that when I got my author copies. They sent me a box of 50 books. And when I went out, and my daughter is a bibliophile, if you've ever seen one, because she reads about a novel a day. She reads about 200 to 300 pages every single day. She's 11. And the first thing she did, she was like freaking out. She went up and went, I was like, what are you doing? She's like,
smelling it.
New book smell. I was like, all right.
I love weird, your daughter.
Good girl, and then next thing she sold like half a dozen books because she like walks around with it and just tells people about it. My daddy wrote a book. It's so cool.
I just love that.
But a new book smell. She loves it.
I love the new book smell too. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy that I can, I write in them and take notes and fill pages. I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy of it, even though I've been through a lot of it in the digital form. I can't wait for the real book to show up. I can't wait. Okay, so we're just about out of time, but I do have one more question that I want to ask you before we run out of time. Okay, there's a quote in the book. One way or another, you're conditioning your audience. So tell us what you mean by that, because that caught my attention. And I know what I think you mean, but tell us what you mean. One way or another, we're conditioning our audience, our peeps, our followers.
Yeah, the question is, what are you conditioning them to do? Because we're always conditioning them to do stuff. So I'll give you an example. Like we send an email to your list, right? Are we conditioning them? Are we putting all the content in the email and they go, good email, and then they delete it? Or are we saying, here's something I wrote, click here to go read it? You do that 50 times, you've conditioned them. You've conditioned them, just like Pavlov's dogs, right? With the bell ringing, so they salivate because what did he do? He rang the bell, gave him food, rang the bell, gave him food. The first 3 times, they didn't connect the dots, but eventually you rang the bell, they drooled, So what are we conditioning them to do? Same thing applies, step 9 of the book is all about monetizing. Well, are we conditioning our audience to just expect free content forever, or are we expecting them to eventually make a purchase, whether it be to buy one of our products or to set up a coaching call or to purchase something, from an affiliate? And so I share in the book, like, what do top marketers do? And I don't remember the exact stats, but it's in step 8 of the book, but it's something like 95, 96, 97% of the top marketers, their call to action in the email is to click to do something. Click to read the blog post, click to listen to the podcast episode, click to watch the video, right? About 2-3%, their call to action is hit reply. Let me know your thoughts, or hit reply to get more information, or something like that. Occasionally, about once every 6 months, my call to action in an email is text me to get the free report, for example. Why would I do that? Because I'm growing my text list as well. I'm using my email subscribers to then drive them to become, text subscribers, which is a more intimate form of communication. Less than 1% of all of the top marketers' emails didn't have a call to action. So we're conditioning them to do something in response. And so I walk you through in the book, like, how do we actually condition you? How do we condition our audience to click? How do we develop that type of relationship where they see an email from Clara and they go, all right, I'm going to read. She's going to tell me what this is about. If I'm interested, I've got to click to find out more. We condition them to do that. So one way or another, we're conditioning them, whatever it is. We're conditioning them to expect free offers. We're conditioning them just to get all the content in the email, to click. We're expecting them to not click, to not reply. We're always conditioning them. And so, for instance, for me, we would have like 2 emails a year where the call to action in the email is not click or reply. Now, in fact, actually, no, probably 1 every 2 years where it's neither. 99, 98% are click. A couple times we'll say reply. And so I walk you through like how to condition them. There's I think seven steps on how to condition them in there. We even walk you through all of that, right down through like, how to segment your emails and things like that. So that we're ultimately conditioning individual people on our list to do the thing that we want them to do.
Wow, that's good stuff. I haven't actually read that section. So when I picked that, I'm like, ooh, I'm anxious to see what he has to say.
Yeah.
It's so true that we condition people, right?
Mhm.
We condition them to, if you always just do freebie stuff, they are just going to expect that you do freebie stuff. And when you ask them to buy something, they're like, wait a minute, where's the free stuff? Right?
Yeah.
That's
They'll
good
even
stuff.
revolt. I read about this in step 9 about monetizing. Like, if you condition them long enough that you're the free content person, then when you do eventually sell something, they will get angry at you. It's the weird thing. Like, you don't go into Walmart and go, I can't believe you're trying to sell bananas. This is a
What the
Oh,
heck?
TVs? Why don't I just get to sit? I thought Walmart was the place where you go and just sit and watch TV for free.
For free.
No, they
Yeah.
actually will sell you the television and you take it home. It's amazing. And so it's weird how we think that, though, with content creators, with bloggers and podcasters. Wait, your stuff was free for so long and now you're charging me? Like, we don't have to buy it. My content is still, my podcast is free. My blog posts are free. The emails are free. If you choose to take something to the next level, then go right ahead. If you choose not, hey, cool, you can still listen to the podcast. I'm still going to publish 52 episodes a year completely for free. Never going to charge you a dime. Why would you get mad at me? Because every now and again on my podcast is saying, by the way, if you want to go buy something, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Matt, we are totally out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I
Pleasure.
want to continue this conversation, but we are just totally out of time. You guys get your hands on this book. It is going to change your business. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, guys.